Thank you for the warm welcome. We have a project called Camelot, and we'll be telling you what we did this year. Last year we spoke in Birmingham. There we gave a talk about Camelot in general. This year we'll be speaking about the new beauty. So, I'm Jeroen Dirks. This is my colleague Erik Janssens. This is our data. I'm going to skip further introduction. Please refer to these links. Our project uses Python and Qt and SQL Alchemy as the main building blocks. Now, maybe a quick show of hands. Who uses Qt? Who uses PyQt? Who uses PySide? Okay, cool. The main website, Python Camelot with a hyphen, and the mailing list can be found on Google Groups. So let's kick off. What is Camelot? Here you can see, well, first of all, Camelot is a framework. It's a framework to develop rich GUI applications, and the speed of development is kind of crucial, as well as the ease of use for the end user in the other order. So we really want to give the end user a good experience. That's what it is. This is how it looks like to define an object, an entity. And as you can see, it's inspired by Django to define the fields in a simple way. Here you can see a movie entity, which has a title, a short description, a release date, and a genre. And they are all fields where you specify what type they are, Unicode, date, and so on. Every entity has to have an admin class where you can specify, at least, as you can see here, what needs to be displayed in the list. That's basically the core of the project. This is what it looks like in Linux. So here you have a navigation pane. You have a toolbar. You have tabs. We'll talk about that later. And you get a list with filters, actions. We'll talk about all these. And here you can see the columns that we saw in the code. Cover, title, release date, rating. And if you click on a row, you get the object itself. We'll see that later on.
So an important question is, of course, why should one use Camelot? First of all, because it's user and developer friendly. We really spend a lot of time looking at users, how they are using the application, and then improving upon it so that it's intuitive for the user to use. And developer friendly, because Camelot, it's a framework, but we try to make it a framework that you can customize without the need to monkey patch. So it exists out of a set of base classes, and you can always subclass one of those classes, re-implement some of its methods to customize the behavior, and then inject this class back into your application so you can customize things without using dirty tricks. It's based on Qt and SQL Alchemy, which are both very mature libraries. So with Qt, you can develop cross-platform applications, which are very, very nice to use. And SQL Alchemy is without doubt, it's the best ORM for Python that you can get. It has a lot of very advanced features, and this is very useful if you start a small application, but once your application grows, you will need more advanced features, and those are all in SQL Alchemy. So that's very good to know if you start developing an application. It's also a very productive environment to develop applications in. If you have an idea for a database application, you can go very fast from idea to implementation. That's because it's based on the Django admin interface, how Django works. So that's also very productive. So we took a lot of ideas from it that we reused in Camelot. And the application is multi-threaded from the start. Now, why is this important? In Camelot, we have a GUI thread, which runs basically all the Qt stuff. And we have a model thread, which runs all the SQL Alchemy stuff. And this means if you have a query that is a little bit slow, or there is a network connection that is slow, or a file is opening slow, or it's a very large file, your application will never freeze. So there is always a first level of security against freezing of applications because of this separation of the model in one thread and the GUI in the other thread. And Camelot was developed from day one with multi-threading in mind. So as you all know, it's very difficult to implement multi-threading in an application that was not designed this way.
But don't believe Eric's word on why you should use Camelot. Here are some quotes, mainly from the mailing list, because that's one of our main communication channels. Mr. J. Fooley says, Camelot is proving to be a great software development environment. This quote is not new, so is proving to be. I think maybe it's already proven. Jens on the mailing list, we couldn't find his last name. Maybe he's here? No? But we wanted to put it in here because, it's just fun to use. If someone uses your software and says it's fun to use, makes it, that's fun. That's nice to hear. Enjoyment, yeah. Looks really promising. And Mr. Kaiser says, I'm already able to build desktop applications at warp speed, just as promised. So, with this introductory, we can start the talk. Let's just say what we're going to talk about. We split this talk up in two big parts, new features and lessons learned. Lessons learned is at the back, it's the smallest part. The new features are, as you can see, tab-based desktop, displaying queries, table view, dynamic field attributes, actions with options, and matplotlib integration. And then at the end, we'll talk about what we learned this year. We had a lot of deployments. We had a couple of successful commercial applications on top of Camelot, which, we'll discuss what we learned from that and how it affected our development model and how we sharpened our tools. Okay. First up, tab-based desktop. We used to have an application with separate windows. We looked at the users and they didn't get it. So we switched to tabs. Every browser these days has it, so it's intuitive. Users, they know it at the snap of a finger. So let's see it work. Note this is Mac. This runs in a Mac. We had Linux screenshots. We have Windows movies in this presentation. It's all real. So let's see what happens. So you see, we have a home tab. It's always there. You can't close it because it can contain actions, application actions. Here you see it's to create a new movie. Opens up a new window. You have a form to create the new movie. I'm not going to do anything here. You can open another tab, like the movie list. You can see, now you have two tabs. The home tab is always there. And the movie tab is also consultable. If you right-click, you can open a tab in a new window. You can open a list in a new tab, And you can easily switch between them. You can close the tab. And if you double click on a tab, it maximizes. Note, because this is on a Mac, we still have the main menu, File, Edit, View, Help. On Windows, this disappears. So you get maximum view.
Okay, so one of the new features of Camelot is the ability to display query results. So until last year, you could easily display and edit tables in a database. But now you can also define queries and then display and edit those. So how does that work? Suppose we have a very simple model here. We have movies, and a movie has a director, which is a person. So there's a link between movie and person. And then we have visitor reports, which is the number of visitors that went to look at a movie on a specific date. So we have a relation between visitor report and movies. Now suppose we want to show to the user how many visitors went to a movie of a certain director, without doing this in some kind of report, but directly into the GUI. So this is how it looks like in code. We have a person with two fields, a first name and a last name, a movie with a director, which refers to the person, and then we have a visitor report, which refers to the movie, and has a field visitors with the number of visitors. So to display the result that we want in Camelot, we first need an object, because Camelot works on objects that are mapped through SQL Alchemy. So we just define a visitors per director object with a little admin interface to tell it which fields we want to display in the list. But we don't define fields in here, because there's actually no table behind these objects. So all the attributes of this object will be put there by SQL Alchemy. We just tell it to display those attributes in the list. Okay. So how do we proceed then? First we create a select statement in SQL Alchemy. So we say select, and then we say which fields we want in our select statement. That's from line 4 to line 7. So we take the person, the primary key of person, which is party ID. We take his first name, his last name. We take the sum of all the visitors. And then we specify the where clause on line 9, where we say we want the persons that are associated with a movie as a director. And we take the visitor reports, which are associated with the movie. And then we group this result set by the person fields, because we want to group everything by director. Notice that you don't have to specify from which tables you're selecting. That's something SQL Alchemy will do for you. And then we map this select statement that's in line 18. We map this select statement to our visitors per director object. You can see that you don't need to specify the primary key SQL Alchemy has to use for mapping this result set to the objects, because SQL Alchemy will be smart enough to take the person party ID for it. If your select statements are more difficult, or you have compound primary keys, then it might be needed to specify those. And we also tell it to always refresh its mapping. This means that every time the query will be executed, SQL Alchemy will update the values, the attribute values of the mapped objects. Okay, that's all we have to do, and we put this in the user interface, and you get this nice this nice table that you can use.
So, little slide about table views. Also a movie. Just to demonstrate, we have frozen columns. Column 1 here, the cover column. It stays frozen while you can scroll the other columns. Just something new. We would like to show you how easy it is to specify this in the admin list columns frozen, and specify the amount of the number of columns you want to freeze. Then
dynamic field attributes. What are field attributes in Camelot? Field attributes are they specify how Camelot should render a certain field in the graphical user interface. So for each field, you can specify a number of attributes like minimum or maximum or precision, which is the numbers behind the decimal point, or you can specify the suffix. Now, all those attributes, they can be static, like you say, for example, the suffix is always m for meter, but those field attributes can also be dynamic. This means you can use a function as a field attribute, and then Camelot will evaluate this function for each object and will change the field attributes according to the result of this function. Now, until last year, this only worked for like 2 field attributes, like tooltip and background color. But as of the last release, this works for most of the field attributes. So in this example, we'll demonstrate a financial product. A financial product is something like it can be a savings account. So we made a financial product called a Python investment. And a financial product can have certain features like interest rate. It can have an entry fee, a minimum number of days your money needs to be in the savings account. And we'll just show you how easy it is with those dynamic field attributes to make a very simple data structure to define very complex products. So this is the list of all the features of a certain financial product. And then you see that each feature has a different suffix, a different precision, and it can have a different background color as well. So here is the form of one of those features. And you see this is the drop-down box with the feature. And if you change the feature, you see that the value, the suffix of the value changes as well as its precision. And its tooltip as well. And its background can change as well depending on the value you entered. For example, if you entered values that are probably bogus, like interest rates that are too high. If you're not living in Greece, this is probably not true. So how do you implement such thing? First of all, you define an enumeration of features. So here in line 1 until 3, we have this enumeration where 1, 2, and 3 will be the values that are stored in the database. And then the user will see interest rate, tax rate, or entry fee. Then we define a feature class where we can have many features for one product. And a feature has a name, which is what's specified in the enumeration. And it can have a value, which is a numeric field. So how to introduce the dynamic field attributes? We extend the feature table a little bit, so we add for each feature a specific suffix. And then we create a function on line 8, value suffix, which gives the suffix that should be used for a certain feature depending on the name of the feature. And then in line 18, we tell Camelot to use this value suffix function as the field attribute for suffix for the value field. And then every time the name of the feature changes, Camelot will evaluate this function and change the suffix of the value. And to make this more complex, we can add, for example, a threshold at the last column of our features table. And this will define when a feature becomes probably invalid. And then we create a value background color function, which will return the background color of the value depending on the value itself. So notice that there is this color scheme class. This color scheme class contains all the colors of the Tango color theme. So if you use colors from this class, you're certain that they map well to the interface. And then again in the field attributes, we say the background color of the value can be get from the value background color function. And this way you can very easily create something to configure complex products. And also if you need new features for a product, it's just adding one line in the table and you're done. So, for example, in this application, we have more than 20 features, and every month users ask new features, and it's just a little bit of work for us to add them.
Another area where we did a lot of work this year is actions. Quick overview. Actions can have a different context. They can work on lists, forms, and the entire application. And you can actions can run in the model or in the GUI thread. An example of this is the docx form action, which we use a lot. The clients really appreciate this. It's a way to generate Word XML and open them directly in Word. So the client can have a nice report, which he can later edit if he wants. So here's this in action. You have the action buttons there, one of which is account state. If I click it, a Word document opens, which can be layouted by somebody else. And you can see it's still Word, so the user can always edit it.
Good.
Is the template fixable, or you can change it?
Yes.
Style of the document.
No. That's just custom. You make whatever you take. Actually, you take a Word document, you create a Word document in Word, you save it as a .xml file, and then you run it through XML lint to clean it a bit, and then you create your template from it. But Jeroen will explain.
Yes. So let's see how it works. So you create an object which extends docx form action, available in Camelot, and you create a context. The context here contains the variables or the placeholders where you assign the values to. So we have here today, which has a date. Account is an object. Subscribers can be a list. Correspondents can be a list too. You specify a get template method, which just gets the XML file, which you probably got from your client. And you load up the environment, which speaks for itself, I think. You can use any environment. We mostly use Jinja. Quick sample of how the XML looks like, a Word XML file where you can place the placeholder which will get filled in. Here we use Jinja, like I said. We use the today label, and we run it through a Jinja filter date to nicely format it. Another very cool feature which a lot of clients love is the document merger, which is in Camelot for free. You make a document like it doesn't matter. Here I made a small document with some placeholders, and I use the obj object to get the specific fields from the object. We have title, we have director, and so on. Of course, little magic needs to be done with XML lint to get Word to play nice with these tags. Let's see it in action, I think. Yes. Like I said, we use these placeholders, these Jinja placeholders here. We start from that. Here I open up the movies list. I select 3 movies. Go to Edit, Merge Document, and select the XML file that I just showed you. Click Next. And 3 documents are generated because I selected 3 movies. Each document will now contain the information about the movie. So you see everything is nicely replaced. And to show you I'm not cheating, this is the other movie, the second movie, Casino Royale, and finally, third movie, Toy Story. Document merge. Your clients will love it.
Then we have another example, which are list actions with options. So list actions are actions that appear on the right-hand corner of the table view. There's a button, you can click on it, and something happens, like in this case, generating a report. You see when you click on it, the action asks some information from the user. For example, here the user has to say if he wants on his report only the selected rows in the table view or all the rows. And that changes the behavior of the action. So I will now quickly demonstrate how to build those actions. So generating a report is something that happens inside the model thread because you need access to the database. So you just subclass a class named list action from model function. That's a base class in Camelot, and it has an important method which is model run. It has 3 arguments. Collection, that's all the rows in the table view the user is looking at. Selection is an iterator over all the selected rows. And then there's the third argument, options, which we'll discuss right away. So to create your own action, you just subclass list action from model function, implement the model run method. In this simple case, we just print all the objects in the selection, and then add an instance of the my list action object to the list actions of the admin. That's it. Then the action is now there. And now we'll demonstrate how to use options before running the actions. So what you then have to do is to specify an inner class, options, of the action class. When Camelot sees this option class, it will pop up a form in front of the user when he presses the button, and it will ask the user to complete this form and then continue with the action. So this demonstrates as well the possibility of Camelot to work with objects that are not mapped to the database. So this is just a plain old Python object. It has one attribute, only selected, and we give it an admin class to tell Camelot how to display this object. And then in the model run method, the third argument, options, will be an instance of the options with a capital class with the values entered by the user. And then you can use these options inside the run method to either, in this case, print the objects that were selected or print all the objects. So it's a quite common pattern in this kind of applications to have just this options dialog, and it's very fast to create it this way. Next, we have matplotlib integration. This is a plot in matplotlib. Okay. So how does that work? Matplotlib works with a set of plot commands, and those plot commands are executed on access objects. Access objects are access in a chart. And the way Camelot works, because we have 2 threads, we have the model thread and the GUI thread. In the model thread, we have to aggregate all the data we want to put on the plot, and then in the GUI thread, we'll make the actual plot really fast, so that there is no slowdown for the user. So how does it work? In the model thread, we are going to record all plot commands to matplotlib. So we created a fake matplotlib access object. You call all commands on this access object. They are recorded, and then they are shipped, they are recorded and stored in what we call a container. This container is shipped to the GUI thread, and in the GUI thread, we just execute those commands with all the data already fetched, so that goes really fast. So that sounds more complicated than it is. This is an example of it. To display a chart on a form, you just have to create a property, in this case chart, which returns a container that contains all the commands for matplotlib. And then in the field attributes, you say this property chart needs to be displayed with a chart delegate, and then this just acts as a normal field, like a float or an integer, but in this case, a chart. And then inside the chart property, we return a plot container. A plot container is a very simple container for matplotlib. It takes as its arguments, as its construction arguments, all the arguments you can give to the matplotlib plot function. So that's really easy to create simple plots. The first plot you saw was created with this function. You can create more complex plots as well. In this plot, you have a vertical span, and there are grid lines. I don't think you can see them, but they are there. Yeah. So you see in this chart method, we create an access container object, and then we call various functions on this access container. The container stores all the actions, all the functions you called, along with the arguments, and then you ship the access container to the GUI thread, and the chart delegate takes care of displaying the matplotlib figure.
So, how we did in the real world. This concludes the new features. Now we'll talk a bit about what we learned the past year in the real world by dealing with the clients. So that's us, our team, young, happy, vibrant bunch. And this is us after 100 deployments. So deployment for a desktop application is somewhat different than web apps, for example. But notice how cool we're still, though. So how do we do it?
So one of the things we did was, what I think we did wrong was we were using Py2.exe to deploy our application. So what we did, we just downloaded a custom stock Python from the website. We downloaded various libraries from the websites, installed them, and then used Py2.exe to create a bundle of the application, and then prayed that it would work on the side of the customer, which was almost never the case. So what did we do? We created our own Python distribution from source for all the binary libraries we needed. This was a lot of work, but what we can do if we did this, we have one installer which installs our own Python distribution. It's a distribution that doesn't depend on registry settings, so it does not interfere with already installed Pythons or something else. And then to deploy an application, we just add our little module, the application itself, to the Python distribution, ship the Python distribution with the right entries in the menu, in the Windows Start menu, and we're done. And all the libraries you use, they just work because you're using them in a Python distribution and not in some changed environment like Py2.exe, so you don't need to use dirty tricks and all this kind of stuff. We were able to compile all the libraries with the options that we wanted, like SQL Alchemy, with the C extensions to get more speed up, the same for Jinja. And when there still is an issue, we can fire up a Python interpreter at the site, or just use the Spider IDE, which we included, to edit some configuration files. And this all saved us a tremendous amount of time in deploying. And you can get this Python distribution from the website. for a little bit of Windows tax. So we also changed our development model a little bit. So in our development model, you had like 3 parties that were involved. You had the developers, us. You had the domain expert who knew everything about what the application should do. And then you had the users. There are many of them. We don't know them. We're a little bit scared of them. So how do we do our development now? We have the domain experts, which give input to the developers. The developers modify and create the application. And then we have BuildBot that makes nightly builds. And those nightly builds are through an automatic updating system immediately installed on the PC of the domain experts, so they can follow really quickly on what we're doing. And so we have a very good feedback loop. Then when both domain experts and developers think, okay, the application is at a state that it can be released, a release is pushed through the automatic update system to the PC of the users. And the PCs of the users, they give logs back to us, to our logging database, so we can see if there are exceptions happening at the site of the users, and we can fix the application before the user has noticed something went wrong.
To accomplish this, Eric built a small tool, which is called Cloud Launch. It's a terminal tool. It doesn't have a GUI, and it's tightly integrated with setup tools. So you can see here, we can build an egg with BDIS Cloud, and we can build a Windows installer with WinInst Cloud. Pretty straightforward and easy for us.
The egg is a little bit special in the sense that it contains metadata about the application on how to update itself and this kind of things.
Well, the egg doesn't. It's a different file. It's a cloud file, a CLD file we use to store a dictionary. It's a JSON object which contains all the information about this update. Revision numbers. We use revision numbers to see if a client needs an update. Every time he starts the application, goes to see whether he can find a cloud file, and then check with his own file, and then he'll download the egg. The application restarts, the new egg is loaded, and update is done. Works very well. The other nice feature is that we can monitor our clients. So you can see here in the second command, we use setup.py monitor cloud, and we get nice info about what the users are doing and how it's failing. So that's it. That was our talk about new features and what we learned this year. Camelot, again, our data. I just wanted to say that there is a course planned on SQL Alchemy and Camelot in Germany, which will be taught by Eric. It's
somewhere in October. The data is on the website.
Yes.
I don't remember.
Please consult pythoncamelot.com for more information about that. And I will put the slides online soon. Today. So thank you very much, and if there are any questions, please.
In the example, you use docx to export. Can you also export as ODT? And for merging, you use Office to generate XML. Is that needed?
It can work with OpenOffice as well. It's just we're just using Jinja to merge the templates, so it could be done with OpenOffice as well. Unfortunately, most of our users are using
just wondering.
Word.
So, actually, in a commercial application that I've been doing at work, I've written something which is almost identical to what you guys have done. It's not quite as general or as complete as yours, but it's the same basic idea. I was wondering if you've already got a big SQL Alchemy model and it's all set up all nicely, and I say I wanted to use one of your fancy table views, can I use your product as a library and say, with this SQL Alchemy object, display me this beautiful widget? Or
if you have SQL Alchemy objects, then it can be done. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If you're just have a relational database and you're using you can use SQL Alchemy to extract objects from it. I don't know. I don't think that would be the purpose of the application.
Sure.
But if you have a SQL Alchemy set of objects, it can be done. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Just a question about licensing. How do you handle the PyQt GPL license with your clients mostly, especially as deployment?
Well, we have the Camelot itself is GPL,
Yeah.
like PyQt,
Yeah.
and we have a commercial PyQt license.
And so that doesn't cause any. So you don't have any look at PySide, for example, thinking about switching for that for specific clients, or
when we decide between PyQt or PySide, if it's really a decision, we will decide on technical merits of both frameworks. That being said, there is a script inside the source distribution which converts Camelot to PySide. It was not really working properly with PySide 1.0 because there were still some bugs in PySide, but I believe they have been fixed, but I didn't try it afterwards.
With the distribution you built yourself, how easy is it to, how automated is it? Like if you want to upgrade libraries or Python, etc.
The distribution it's a Python script, of course, and it downloads all the sources from the various websites and builds it all in one step. So if you want to upgrade the library, it's just updating the download location for the source files, and that's it.
In the booklet, it mentions that this intends to be a kind of replacement to Microsoft Access. Do you know of a case in which they decided to port an application either or stop using Microsoft Access?
There is one blog on the internet from I don't remember the name of the person who wrote it, but he saw it as a replacement to Microsoft Access. We never really started with that idea in mind, but it appears that you can replace Microsoft Access applications with Camelot, but we see Camelot as something different from Access because the development model is completely different. It's not drag and drop, it's writing code and using the full power of Python to generate your stuff.
Do you support localization?
Excuse me?
Do you support localization?
Yes, of course, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we demonstrated this last year. There is even the option if you're running a Camelot application and there is a field name, the user can right-click on the field name and change the translation himself. So that's really handy if you're deploying to multiple languages. And then you can ask a user to translate the application, extract a PO file from it, and ship it next time. Any more questions?
Did you have issues with SQL Alchemy? Because we used it in the past, and I remember we have some glitches with change of version, 03, 04, 05. Even with minor versions, some features were slightly different. So we ran into trouble. So maybe we were using some strange feature. What's your experience with SQL Alchemy in general, as stability?
Well, I'm very happy with SQL Alchemy. Indeed, we have those issues as well. So every time there is a new version of SQL Alchemy, we have to go over the code and look very carefully what is happening. My experience is that it's just understanding SQL Alchemy is difficult. I mean, you can use it like here or with Elixir on top. It's very simple. It's like the Django or system. But it's really something completely different. I don't see it as only as an ORM, or you don't have to see it as a tool to write SQL queries in Python, because you could have written SQL as well. I more see it as a tool to manipulate queries, and just a different perspective. But I'm very happy with it. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.